it's been said that I should do more talking to camera while I'm working to show my amazing personality. Well, it's a pain in the hole, that's why I don't do it, but I'm game. So without further ado, what I'm going to do next is weld this bar in between the two A-pillars so that they don't move when I cut that top windscreen surround away. Oh, talk to the camera when I'm working. I'll leave you feeling dirty. Now you see, that's why it doesn't work. The first thing I actually had to do was to take the wiring out of the A-pillars so that we could have a clean job. Now, I've taken that steel bar and I've tacked a piece of plate to it, 2.5mm plate. And the reason is I want this bar obviously to keep the structural integrity, but also to give me reference points for the top windscreen frame when I go to weld the new one back in. And the hardest part of getting this bar in was getting a shape on the ends of the bars that would meet the A-pillars very closely, but I still managed to weld it in a little bit cockeyed. It's a little bit uneven. I can account for that later on. And later on you will see that I mark the extremities of the windscreen surround on the support bar. Okay, so with that in, I can now look at taking the roof off, and the roof is just held in by a series of screws that run all the way around its extremity. Inside and above the door shuts, there are these grommets, and behind those are I think 9 or 10 screws each side, all the way along the inside of the windscreen frame. There are more, and then when you work aft of the C-pillar, these screws go inside the car and are accessible from underneath the headlining. And then all that's left are these support brackets for the sunroof. I'm not sure that these are on a non-sunroof car. There are 6 of them. So the roof is now effectively just held in by the sealant. Let me hit the sunroof switch. So you see the sealant here. I'm not sure what this is, if it's butyl tape that has gotten a bit flaky or whether it's some kind of a tape foam. It does have a bit of a furriness to it, but like I say, I can't decide whether that's just age. It is 29 years old. And you can see all the holes where the screws would have come through. Now this little rubber grommet, I'm not sure what this is for, but I'm going to use the hole it's in to help line up the new surround. So here are just some simple reference points made with a marker. You can see there is a bit of a gap between the support bar and the window frame, but I'm going to measure that and account for it at the end. Okay, so I'm not going to start hacking at the car. I'm going to release the remains of the A-pillars that are on the replacement frame, and the fact that this is off the car makes trying to figure out how to separate all of this a lot easier. And there are some spot welds very obvious underneath, but I don't want to have to drill out all of them if I don't need to. So we'll get under this sealant and see what's there. And okay, it's seam welded, and not even that neatly, which is good news, seeing as we're not exactly a welding Jedi. So it turns out, apart from the seam welds, there are just 2 or 3 spot welds on each side that need to be drilled through. And I don't want to go through the actual frame of the car, so I'm being ginger here. Then onto the seam welds, and everything peels back really easily. I would have been daunted by this maybe 6-8 months ago, but this was rewarding, really rewarding. Now there was one difference between the replacement window frame and our original one, and I believe this is a Vogue SE or a sunroof thing. The support bracket for the sunroof motor has an extra little vault in it, a kind of a box section that sticks down. I think this just locates the headlining, which is deeper in a sunroof car than one without. That was an easy swap over. Just some spot welds to be drilled and then re-welded. And I gave any bare metal a little lick of etch primer. And if I sit this on the car, that's not a bad day's work. You can see these 2 holes. I believe that they must have been kind of alignment holes, jig holes, to get this square in the factory when it was all being welded together. So I'm going to use just a couple of nuts and bolts to align it and to hold everything into place when I'm welding. And now these marks I made are coming in very handy. I'm so glad I did that. By the way, this whole deal with the support bar, this was really an afterthought. I hadn't really thought about what I was doing too hard, and when the time came, I kind of thought maybe I should brace all this up. More like I should definitely brace this. Now, I was surprised to see some of those seam welds were quite proud. It was really left to the sealant to kind of smooth over them and bridge the gap. And I'm not sure what I'm going to use to replace this sealant. I think butyl tape, and butyl tape is thinner than what's here, so I'm going to layer it up. So I fettled and fettled, and I have this thing meeting all of our marks and sitting in very nicely. Okay, we're good to go. So a little clean up and then a little bit of welding. And there's a few pock marks in it, but it's all good. This is a strong weld. And you'll notice I've hit a couple of plug welds in the top too, where I drilled out those spot welds. I dare say, notwithstanding the pock marks, my welds are a bit flatter than the factory ones. So it's time to release the brace bar, and I've set up a quite close shot so that we can see exactly what happens when it lets go. And there is a tiny bit of movement, but truth be told, the gap that was between the plate on the reinforcing bar and the new window frame was closed up. I let the window frame sit on it. So it's as if it's almost sat up where the original one was. It's gone up where it needs to be. The distance it's actually moved is very little. The bar falling away makes it look like a much greater distance than it actually was. That's a stupid thing to say in a sense, because if this windscreen surround has travelled upwards slightly, it probably means that the two A-pillars have travelled towards each other just slightly. Anyway, we just got to keep moving, and the next thing to do is to start prepping the whole top frame of the car, getting rid of all the sealant and getting it ready for paint and some new sealant. And that brought us into the evening on a fairly sunny day, so I thought, hey, let's give the inside of the bonnet a second lick of paint and get it out of the shed, because it's getting damaged, being kicked and scraped in there. So the next morning I hit the outside of the bonnet with some etch primer, some normal primer and a little bit of colour, and I've made a royal hash of this. I tried to use that trick feathering the paint with the masking tape, and I just didn't do it well at all, but I learned. I can kind of sand this back very gently with some very light paper and then feather it again with some more paint. It doesn't look terrible, well, the left side does. The right side isn't terrible. The colour match is a bit off. It's just good to have the bonnet back on the car. Okay, continuing that prep of the top frame. Rust had started, but it's just surface rust, and if it looks a bit pitted, it's actually that there are indents in this frame all the way around the car, and you'll see those when I clean it up. Okay, so a first coat of brush on primer, and now you can see all the way around the frame is in great nick. And some of those welds, they just look impossibly tall for what has to happen here with the seals. Well, we've a new frame in the car, and that feels good. So over to the roof, and I, having seen what was underneath this leading edge of the roof, I kind of thought, if I peel this bubbling back, it's just going to be holes. It will have oxidized all the way through, and that's how it looked underneath too. But then I realized there's a kind of a double lip here, so I got straight into wire brushing this back, and it turns out it's not in bad nick at all. Now, I'm not going to do the outside of this roof just yet. That's a job for another time. We just need to get the roof back on the car, because the weather is less than consistent just now. With all the underside of the roof prepped, 2 coats of exterior black paint. This is brush on paint too, by the way. And then I realised there were a number of jobs I needed to do in and around the scuttle that would be better with the scuttle back off. So off came the bonnet again, and off came the scuttle. Then I could etch, prime and paint this windscreen surround and A-pillars. And the B-pillars on the near side, both of them had the paint rubbed off them by the prevailing wind on this side of the car and the cover. So essentially on the near side, all of the pillars are getting repainted, as well as the roof rail. And no, I haven't masked this car particularly extensively or well, but I don't really mind. The glass will be easy enough to get overspray off. And here's the job. It's not bad. I mean, I wasn't going for perfection here by any means. This car will always be well used looking, but this should be a decent durable job. I did use a spray can for these top coats, but it's a satin finish with it's like a metal hammerite look kind of a thing. So the jobs in and around the Scuttle. First was this grommet that I had forgotten. Second, I knew there was a lot of welding spatter and bits of crusty rust and stuff that had fallen out of the windscreen that had gone in underneath the Scuttle, and I didn't want them in there. Third thing was a horrific panel gap between the offside driver's wing and the door. It's still kind of dodgy, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. And then lastly, I hadn't put any kind of sealant between the leading edge of the Scuttle and the body of the car. And no, the panel underneath the Scuttle that I repaired, it's not a sealed panel, but this particular seam would drive plenty of water in there. Okay, so with the Scuttle back on, we are now ready for a windscreen. And I throw the rubber in to test fit it and then go and inspect the windscreen itself, which I really hadn't done. And I found that there was a hell of a lot of sealant all the way around, some kind of compound, but in some areas it was 3 or 4 mil thick. So there's quite a lot of space when fitting one of these windscreens, you know. I mean, there's 3 or 4 mil certainly laterally side to side. There was also traces of sealant between the rubber and the frame of the car itself. And I don't have any kind of a bedding compound for windscreens, so what I went to use was this butyl tape. Like I say, it's quite thin, but it's incredibly pliable. It'll form into whatever shape it's forced to. Now, it was way too wide, and I trimmed a 10 mil section off it, and then gently pushed that thin section into one side of the rubber where the windscreen will meet it. Now, I was guessing at this, but I have spoken to a windscreen expert since then, and they told me that the instincts weren't bad at all, that they would use other things nowadays, but that in the past, butyl tape was a go-to sealant or bedding aid for windscreens in certain applications. So, myself and a pal offered the glass up and then started to tease the glass into the rubber. This, by the way, is also an accepted method of doing it. It's just not a particularly easy one. I mean, having the rubber on the car before you put the windscreen in, rather than having the rubber on the windscreen. And I'm not going to labour this point. We got the windscreen in kind of on 3 sides and a bit of the top too. And I was feeling pretty hopeful. Even though I had split the brand new rubber in one corner, I didn't think it was going to be that big a problem. But we cracked it. I should say I cracked it. And I'm glad it was me and not my pal, because you know how that goes. So like I said, I have spoken to a windscreen fitter, and he is scheduled to come and put in a new windscreen for us, or a new to me windscreen, ASAP. There's no guarantees even he won't break it. We're going to find out. Bet you've got a lot of questions, like why didn't I use the cord method, the piece of string on the windscreen rubber, or why did I put the rubber on the car first instead of putting it on the glass first? Well, I had my reasons, and these are all things that I want to sit down with a windscreen expert on and get some methodology, maybe find out what works best in what situation. And that's something I really hope to bring in the coming episodes. Can't say any more than that just yet, but that's something to watch out for. Tomorrow I go on a road trip to pick up a second-hand screen for this. It's gotten to the point where I just need a piece of glass to go into the front of this car. The screen I'm picking up is a heated screen, and I've already been in the UK since shooting everything you've just saw to pick up a different heated screen, a second-hand heated screen. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. The glass wasn't what it was billed to be. But I want to say a massive thank you to patron Michael, who went out of his way to pick it up for me and came and met me. Just unfortunate it didn't happen in the end. To my other new patrons, Ben Colligan, Benny Gustafsson, David Sparling, David Williams, Guy Vinnels, Jano Pusep, John Oakey, Jeffrey Moore, Oliver Naylor and Ken Hazard, and to all my patrons, as ever, thank you for bringing the support and the motivation, and thanks for sticking with me. I will be back very soon. This thing, I don't think it's possible for it to have any more surprises, but it has proved me wrong quite a few times so far. Until I do see you, do stay stuck in, and good luck.